It is time to talk a little bit of football, NFL football, and the Browns. The Browns have the third most salary cap space available, according to Sportstrack.com. That is the one that tracks all of the NFL contracts. The Colts have the most with $105 million. The Jets have the second most with a projected $95 million. Then come the Browns with $79 million. What that means is the Browns can be active in free agency or potentially acquiring veterans that have big contracts that need a change of scenery. Time to bring in cleveland.com columnist Doug Lesmerises. Doug, when we talked about this yesterday, or last week rather, you had mentioned there's a window of opportunity for the Browns to win. It's now. They have the money to do it. What areas do you see best served by the Browns going out and spending some of that $79 million in cap space that they have to acquire veterans?
Well, I think it's the areas that all Browns fans could identify. There's a left tackle situation still. You could use a little help at receiver, and then a couple defensive playmakers. It's just a matter of who fits that could come in the draft and who fits that maybe you can go spend some of this money on. I don't know exactly what left tackle possibilities are. So when I look at people doing the draft projections, then I'm wondering if that's the best place for the Browns to find a left tackle possibly. Maybe it's relying on Greg Robinson, but maybe it's with that first-round pick. Receiver, again, I'm not 100% sure who the obvious free agent candidates are. I'm not sure there are a ton of them, but maybe that's where you can look for some veterans who are not free agents right now but are going to get expensive for their teams. But on defense, there are guys you can go. C.J. Mosley is a name from Baltimore. He makes a ton of tackles. He makes a ton of plays. I think he's only in his mid-20s. I think he's 26. And the Ravens probably aren't going to be able to afford him. They're in a little bit of a salary cap crunch. They like him. They want to keep him. I don't know if they can. If you could add a guy like that at linebacker, you could really elevate your defense to the next level. On the defensive line, there's a lot of guys available in this draft. It's very deep on defensive linemen. So maybe you can go there to fix that as well. But linebacker, I think, is the number one place. If you lose a guy like Jamie Collins, if you're not 100% sure about Christian Kirksey, I think guys like C.J. Mosley, Jordan Hicks from the Eagles, there's a couple guys where you could really improve that defense. They could do what Demarius Randall did for the secondary last year, and I think that's where the greatest opportunity is in free agency.
Well, let's take a look at some of the positions that we just talked about and some of the names that are likely to be out there. When you look at the wide receivers, Golden Tate, Tyrell Williams, Kevin White, pass rush, Sue, Frank Collins, who's a local kid, or I'm sorry, Frank Clark, who's a local kid from Glenville, Dante Fowler, Clowney Ford, Mosley you mentioned, and then on the back half, there's some safeties there that are intriguing. Who jumps out at you, Doug, from this list as somebody that's intriguing? You mentioned Mosley, so that's one we know you like. Who else kind of bites your fancy on these guys?
Yeah, I think D Ford is interesting. You know, Browns fans may remember him from a guy jumping offside that basically cost the Chiefs a chance of going to the Super Bowl. But he's a guy who was drafted by John Dorsey. Everybody likes to link up what John Dorsey did in Kansas City now that he's here in Cleveland. I think he's a possibility. Frank Clark is interesting. I remembered him from when he played at Michigan, obviously being a Glenville kid. You know, Emmanuel Ogbah, you're wondering can you get a better end to play off of Myles Garrett? I think the best chances at defensive tackle, everyone talk about pairing somebody defensive tackle with Larry Ogunjobi. I do think the best chance for that's in the draft, but I think an end like Frank Clark could come through free agency. But again, I think Ford, Mosley, those guys in the linebacker group are the names you're looking at the most. Earl Thomas is a big name. He's great, but I think the Browns are pretty good at safety right now. I think they're pretty decent at corner. So I thought John Dorsey did a good job last offseason shoring up the secondary. So linebacker and maybe a pass rusher is where you'd go now.
Let's talk a little bit about the opportunity to make some trades. John Dorsey showed last year very willing to do that, came away with some pretty good talent doing it as well. Are you willing to take on an Antonio Brown, a Le'Veon Bell, even Odell Beckham Jr. if you can get him? It would be a big contract that you would have to take on. Is it worth it?
Yeah, not for Le'Veon Bell, not for that position when you have a guy like Nick Chubb. You know, Odell Beckham. I mean, people love to throw that name out there. I don't think he's going anywhere, but I do think some of these big name receivers that could be a place where, because they're so flexible with their cap space, that could be where it's worth it. That if you could get a immediate impact guy that becomes Baker Mayfield's number one target, and you can do it because A, you have the money to spend, and B, you have become a place where guys like that want to come and they know they can be happy and you know they'll be productive. That is exactly what this window of opportunity is about. So again, Beckham's not going anywhere, but there may be wide receiver X who's not a free agent, who's good, who's currently on a roster that the Browns could get involved with because that's where they are. They have put themselves in position to be a team where they have money, but it's not only the money. They can absolutely be a place where good players want to play.